Welcome to another edition of the A-List Podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, with my co-host with the most, Kwani A. Lunis. What's up, Kwani? What's going on with you?
I'm doing well. It's May 4th. There's May 5th. There's a lot of holidays going on this week, so this should be a good week, despite what we've been seeing from the Celtics.
Everyone is enjoying these days. Celtics fans, not so much. The season has been just an ongoing roller coaster, and their latest game was yet another dip in the roller coaster for this team. They've won two of the last three, but they're coming off a really not so great performance, which came after a really amazing performance by Jason Tatum. I mean, are you at the point where you're just kind of buckling up for the ride because you know there's no such thing as smooth sailing with this crew?
Absolutely, and I mentioned this I think last week. At this point, I'm just ready for the playoffs. Congrats to Jason Tatum for being named the NBA Eastern Conference Player of the Week, but he dropped a 60 piece, and it still doesn't seem as though his performance alone can keep this team consistent. So again, I don't know how to diagnose this team. And I understand how fans will be like, oh, the media is always complaining about stuff. But at this point, it's just like the consistency isn't there. And I don't even know what else to do as a person consuming their games. I'm over it. I want to see playoff basketball.
I want to see that too. And we'll talk a little bit about playoffs in a minute. We'll get into the play-in format, which they are in the hunt or in the running for that as well. But I guess for me, I just wish they would just pick a style, or not a style, but just a direction to go in and stick with it. Either keep losing and let's talk about the lottery, or start putting some wins together and let's talk about making a deep playoff run. But it's like they're like the ultimate tease right now. It's like they'll show you a great game here and there, and then you're feeling ready to, like, yes, here we go. And then they get beat by Oklahoma City. Then they get beat by, teams that they have no business being in a competitive game with, let alone losing to. This team has been incredibly frustrating, and so many levels has been a disappointment. One guy, speaking of disappointments, not really sure what to make of
introducing our guest with that.
Yeah. Well, he's been a disappointment in many. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's my guy. That's my guy. I can't crap on his name like that. But the guy that I can't make heads or tails about is Evan Fournier. Had a really good game, the other night on Sunday, and started talking afterwards as if he was like one step away from death. I've got concussion symptoms. I've got vision issues, and we'll get into it with our guests a little bit about this as well. But the kind of game that he had against the Trailblazers, and yes, they lost the game, but man, he looked really good. What do you make about just Fournier and just all the same things that he seems to be dealing with now?
No, I agree with you. And the buzzword around the Celtics this season has been the identity issue, not finding their identity on the floor. And I think the same goes for him. When he came to this team, a lot of us were looking at his first performance, and he had to shake off the nerves, so to speak, but there's still no identity with him on the team as well, which I think is not even a him problem. It just highlights, I think, the overall issues that this team has. So obviously you can put some blame on him for the way that he's also been inconsistent, but at the end of the day, I think it all ties back to the fact that this team overall does not know who they are on a day-to-day basis or a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who has had a couple of 0 for the game shooting nights, to drop 21 and shoot really high percentage, it was really surprising to hear him talk about all the kind of the health issues that he's going through. And I don't know whether to take that as, if you can get 21 feeling like that, damn, imagine if he's feeling good. Or is it the other way, like, you know what, that might have been like the ceiling for him, and everything is pretty much going to go down from here. I don't know. We will get into that and more with our guest today, and that will be our good friend of the A-List podcast program, Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo Sports, a.k.a. Sherrod's nephew. That's my guy. He's one of my NTDs, one of my non-tax deductible kiddies. That's my guy. But Vince, he'll join us shortly to just obviously talk about the Celtics, the NBA. We'll talk a little bit of play-in format. We'll also get into a piece that he did recently where he examined the free agency versus the draft and whether or not we should flip those. And again, there's a lot of talk about that among NBA teams, and he certainly dug into that a little bit. We'll get his take on that as well. And that being said, we are going to just jump right in and talk with Vincent Goodwill. Welcome to the A-List Podcast, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Maintaining.
Glad to see you.
Glad to see you, brother. Glad to see you.
Sherrod,
Did you get a haircut?
The first guest to come for a second time on our show.
Yep, I got a haircut, sure. I cut the fro down. Cut it all the way down.
I feel you though. I know how that is. Once upon a time.
I
knew how that was.
I ain't there.
Nowhere near.
Don't laugh too hard because you'll beat it before you know it. Ask Rip Hamilton. He know what I'm talking about.
Dang.
That's the tear when black men get braids. Although you'll never see me with braids. When you are done with the braids, you are done with hair.
He used to clown me and Chauncey all the time about being bald, and me and Chauncey would just look at each other and be like, "You're gonna be with us one day. Your day gonna come. Your day gonna come." And speaking of the day, playoffs are gonna be here pretty soon. Before we know it, and the big news this week in the NBA as it relates to playoffs is your boy LeBron James. Not too happy about this whole play-in format, which is kind of funny because last year he was singing a different tune. But he's calling for folks to get fired and how it's just trash. What's your take on the play-in setup? And also within that framework, your thoughts on LeBron and his thoughts on the play-in?
I mean, well, hey, my thoughts on the play-in is this. You got to think of how we got here. We got here because the last month of the season used to be a slog. It used to be a slog to the bottom from the teams who were tanking because they were well out of the playoff picture. And that's basically what this became. This is not an initiative to make the playoffs more competitive. This is not an initiative to make the playoffs more like March Madness or anything else to increase upsets. This was to keep more teams engaged as long as possible. And now you don't just have the 8, 9, 10 teams in there. You have 11 and 12 that are trying to get in both conferences. So you only have like a handful of teams that are firmly outside of the playoffs, and you know what they're trying to do at this point. But it's not necessarily messing with the overall quality of basketball on a night-to-night basis. Now, for LeBron, this is quite simple. As the facts change, so does my opinion. It's cool when it's y'all. Y'all do the play-in tournament in Memphis, Portland, all of y'all peasants. But when it comes to me and mine, I would not be doing such things. He never envisioned a world where he would be in a position where he would be in a 7th seed or in an 8th seed where he would have to be in a play-in tournament. So, of course, these words are going to come back to bite him now. And, of course, he's going to say it's stupid and everything else, or whoever needs to be fired. Honestly, this is one of the better ideas the NBA has come up with in quite a long time. Like, they need to do something about some of these outlandish offensive numbers. But as far as the play-in tournament, depending on if we can get a LeBron and Steph one game, one off, wait a minute. What's wrong with that? Except that somebody got to lose and somebody going home. That's the problem.
Yeah, LeBron is pulling that "this is beneath me" card, which is funny because pretty much everything about the playoffs should be beneath him because he's been on the top so long. He doesn't know what it's like to be in the hood. This is the postseason hood that he is in right now, where you're just trying to get by. This is like good times for the NBA right now. That's what LeBron James is dealing with now. He's dealing with the good times, the Thelma, the James Evans of the world. That's the reality that he's dealing with. And he's just like, what is this? This is not me. I'm LeBron James. And I love it. I love it. And I love it for the fact that, for one thing, you've actually got incentive to watch NBA basketball because it does have value now. Everyone, even the teams at the top, they're always going to be battling for one of those top spots, trying to secure their place and get a rhythm. But those teams that were, either outside the playoff bubble or just barely in, they scrapping. They trying to get out of that 7 through 10 spot. And, one of the teams right around here, and the Boston Celtics, they're one of those teams that's trying to get out of that. How do you think they're going to fare in this new 7 through 10 play-in format if they're forced to be, well, not forced, because they'll play their way into that. So how do you think they'll fare in a play-in format?
Let me ask you this: like, there's what's the restaurant that we go to in Boston? Is that the Hood?
Oh, you talking about
Sherrod?
Slade's?
Yeah, is that the Hood?
Blades or Daryl's?
Daryl's, one of the two. We go to both, actually. If you're here for 2 nights, we're gonna hit both.
Probably so. I was gonna say, I don't think the Celtics are the type that's gonna be hanging out in some of those hood places. The Celtics need to be in the suburbs. Like they need to
I mean,
be
like
in a
4 or 5.
Yeah, they don't need to be in this 6, 7, 8. They don't need to be in one of these high stress situations. I think people forget this team did make the Eastern Conference Finals last year. It's hard to remember because of how they played this season. But to me, I know that they've been on this late season run where they've played better, but you've had they had a recent bad loss where you get that bad taste out of your mouth. So I don't know which Celtics team is going to show up. All I can do is lean on the totality of the season where you don't know which team is going to show up from night to night. Jason Tatum has been balling even after the whole COVID scare. But my question is, can he lift up everybody else? Right. If he can't lift up everybody else, you're asking him to be better than guys named Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. That's unfair to ask of someone who's not a super athlete or just enormously gifted. Jason Tatum is a great basketball player, but you wonder if he's better fit next to someone who's able to lift your team, either as a coach or a ball player. There isn't a ball player that's capable of doing that, at least not as a distributor, because Kemba Walker is like Kyrie Irving light in that way. And Brad Stevens, I kind of hate to say it, this has not been a banner year for him. Like, I remember there was like a tweet a couple years ago. I don't know if y'all remember this tweet. It says you can have any player in the NBA or Brad Stevens. Can't remember who said that, but I just thought it was idiotic then. I think it's idiotic even now, the fact that we're actually you can even have this discussion. So, yeah, Sherrod, I'm not sure that the Celtics are anything more than first-round powder. Now, if Jason Tatum put a couple 40-pound games out of his behind, okay, you got something. But do you expect him to be better than the New York Knicks as a team, better than the Milwaukee Bucks as a team? That's a lot to ask a guy, because that's the only reason, in my opinion, that you would pick the Boston Celtics in a playoff matchup, is because our best player is going to have these supernova nights as opposed to our team being better than yours.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Milwaukee and New York. I mean, they're kind of like, middleweight division of the Eastern Conference. And you got the 2 heavyweights in Philly, in Brooklyn.
See, I think Philly's a middleweight. I think the East is between Brooklyn and Milwaukee.
And everybody?
Possibly.
Brooklyn versus everybody?
We're not using that. That's slanderous statement. That's a slanderous statement. As a former resident of this fair city, Sherrod, you know better. I think Philly is, while I love Doc Rivers as a coach and how he's helped raise Joel Embiid's level, if your second best players can't shoot, won't shoot, I don't know how much I can depend on you.
That's a good point. Good point. What you got, Kwani?
Well, another person we talked about a little bit earlier was the addition of Evan Fournier to the Celtics. What are your thoughts on him, and do you think he even fits into this Celtics lineup?
Well, it's an interesting thing for me because I wasn't sure they needed another scorer. I felt like from a scoring standpoint, they were pretty well set with Tatum and Brown and the possibility of Kemba Walker coming back and being healthy. Maybe it was a move in saying, you know what, we don't know that Kemba is going to be healthy enough to give us that extra scoring punch in these games where we need him at, and probably just, indicative of the type of offensive league that this has become, where you're looking at a guy like Fournier who can score 20 and telling him, hey, you're going to be our 4th option, as opposed to being a 2nd or 3rd, which I think he probably is a little more suited to. But the other thing of it, guys, is COVID is real. Like, we can operate in these different bubbles, in terms of the NBA and everything else, but this thing affects ball players as much as it can affect regular people like you and I. And for him to say that it feels like he's coming out of a concussion and he's having problems with depth perception and stuff like that, that is serious stuff that you can't say for sure is going to change itself just because the calendar turned to playoff time. And if you can't depend on him, I don't know where you can get any supplemental help, because I would have believed that you would have gone and gotten a big. Because I can't say, depending on Tristan Thompson as your best big, that you're going to have to ask to spend, maybe play 35 minutes a night when these games count, to say, hey, can you clean up the glass and finish inside and defend the rim, while we play mismatched Tristan Thompson around you and try to figure out what works best. So if Evan Fournier isn't able to help you outscore teams, I don't know what way you can actually win, especially if Kemba Walker is going to be on this sort of, maintenance treatment plan where he's not going to play, back-to-backs and things like that.
Hey, you had a piece recently, and we're talking about this a little bit off camera, about just the NBA and the talk about free agency and the draft, and how there's some discussion about maybe trying to flip those. What's the rationale that you've heard for why there's some who think that might be a good idea?
Well, I think one of the big things that I've heard was that what's the rationale for keeping it the way that it is, besides it's the way that we've always done it. And I think if you look at it, like, big market teams have their own agendas, when they think about free agency, and hey, if we can get our big free agent in the fold, that changes how we do the draft. That changes the way that we can maneuver draft picks or potential draft picks to maneuver cap space and things like that. So if we get free agency out of the way first, that allows us to better, form our team, and it allows us to take best player available, which every team likes to say that they do. Now, if you're a small market franchise, it could hamstring you a little bit, because so much of the activity that happens on draft day is in preparation for free agency. If you're trying to clear up cap space, you may wind up trading the draft pick to one of these smaller market teams that can take a lower player and have him under cost control contracts for the first, 3 to 4 years of his career. But for me, just from a common sense standpoint, if the draft is simply about taking the best player available and you want to fill your needs before that, looking at the NFL model seems like a more logical place to go. But right now, Sherrod, it seems like it's more of a 50-50 proposition. I don't think that the league necessarily has a strong feeling one way or the other. I think they're leaving it to the teams. And if it actually goes to a vote, it's going to have to pass at least by a 50-50 vote, if not 2/3, if not 3/4. So you still got a little bit of way to go before we actually get to some wholesale change there.
I just hope that they keep talking about it, because I think that one of the beautiful things about the NBA is that they really have kind of rolled the dice on as far as how they go about doing their business. And more times than not, it works out to their advantage. And it does feel as though the way that we've done the draft and the way that we've done free agency, it's gotten kind of stale. And it's gotten to the point where, there's a certain, you feel a certain copycat-ish dynamic that you're seeing other pro sports adopt, that's very similar to what the NBA does. The NFL, for once, with the Aaron Rodgers, talk, and, with San Francisco, wanting to draft Mac Jones at number 3, which, again, for me was the ultimate head scratcher. Like, y'all do realize he played with, like, the best running back in the country, the best wide receiver in the country, the best head coach in the country. I'm sorry, but I feel pretty good about being able to complete 50-55% of my passes with that crew around me. And again, no shade on Mac Jones, but how could that not be?
Shade. That's shade.
Yeah, but you're right. You're right. It was. You're right. It's the truth. But again, I love how the 49ers basically played all of us. Yeah. All of us thinking that they were doing that. They were clearly playing checkers when we thought they were playing chess. They're like, no, we're keeping this really simple. Checkmate, we're done. So anyway.
Ready for some games?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to play a game that we debuted last week called, what is it called?
Who's got the props?
Who's got the prop bets? See,
Who's got the props?
So for you, Vinny, who would you consider to be the scoring champ between Steph Curry or Bradley Beal? Who are you taking?
I think I will take Steph Curry, honestly, because Golden State needs it more. Like, if he doesn't go nuclear, they're not going to win. Like, when you look at this roster and some of the guys that they're playing, Sherrod, it's a who's who of who. A who's who of
who's a who that. It's a who's who of who that.
Who? Like, next to Draymond Green, who's not an offensive weapon, and Andrew Wiggins, who, while he's improved, is not necessarily the most dependable fellow in the world.
Right.
Steph Curry is the one guy that has to carry this. Bradley Beal doesn't have to carry it as much because he's got Russell Westbrook, who wants to carry everything. Steph has to carry everything. So if I got to put a player up there, I'm going to say Steph.
Yeah, I go with Steph too, only because I think he's just going to have more opportunities. To your point, there's no Russell Westbrook. There's nothing even remotely close to that Steph has. Draymond, he can get you 20 rebounds and 20 assists, but guess what? He get you 3 points. That's all you get, 3 points. Stat lines that just make me want to laugh my ass off. I got 20 rebounds. I got 20 assists. I got 3 points. What? You couldn't get one of them.
They got a crazy record if he scores 8 points or more.
That's
like all he's got to do is score 8. That's
exactly. That's exactly. So yeah, I would go with Steph for sure.
Perfect. So between Luka Doncic or Trae Young, who will lead their team out of the first round of the playoffs? First.
I can't believe that this is actually a question. Luka Doncic. No shade to Trae Young, although this is going to sound like shade.
It's totally shade. You ever notice the shade comes right before they say no shade?
Yeah, it's like with all due respect, and then you completely disrespect.
I don't mean to sound rude, but
right. I've never did that. I don't mean to sound rude. I'm just going off and being rude. But you notice that the Atlanta Hawks are better when he doesn't have the ball. You notice that the Atlanta Hawks were pretty good when he was out with an injury. That says a lot to me about the hold that he has on this team and how pretty much there's a better team around him than him type of thing. So with me, Luka, they put a lot on Luka in Dallas. And Kristaps Porzingis, God bless him, ain't it. But if they find a second guy, if they find a legit second guy, and we know Mark Cuban likes to go after a certain type. If he goes after a different type of ball player, the type of ball player that exists in the NBA, they'll actually be pretty good because Luka is that guy. And not saying that Trae puts up good numbers and stuff like that, but Luka Doncic is a franchise changer in a way that Trae Young ain't.
See, I'm going to go with Trae, and here's why. I to your point about Porzingis, he can't be counted on to help you. And I think Trae has a better shot of getting out of the first round because the guys around Trae are just better. He's got a better supporting cast, and he's in a weaker conference, the Eastern Conference. Would anyone be shocked, really shocked, if, let's say, Atlanta holds on to that 4 spot and they play the Knicks and they beat the Knicks in 7 games? Would anyone really be shocked by that? Maybe a little surprised, but not shocked. Stephen A. Smith would be shocked. He would absolutely be shocked. But for the most of us, it would be a mild surprise, but certainly nothing that's going to just set the world on fire. And it will be because of his supporting cast. Luka has a weak supporting cast. And the only strength that he has around him that's like really legitimately talented can't stay healthy enough to play. That's why I would put Trae having a much better shot of getting out of the first round than Luka, because Luka, one guy is not going to get it done in this NBA. And that's all Luka's working with, whereas Trae has got multiple guys who can play and have played relatively consistent this year. And frankly, as I pointed out earlier, they're in a weaker conference, and that matters. What you got, Kwani? I know you got some more.
Of course, I do. Between Detroit, Houston, and Minnesota, who do you think will end up with the worst record this season?
No, I think it's going to be
Detroit basketball.
You know what? The Pistons, I think, are at least they are one hit the lottery pick away from like turning that thing around. Mm-hmm. And it's been a long time since there's been meaningful basketball in Detroit.
I know. I was there.
I was gonna say either Sherrod had hair or Sherrod was here.
Sherrod had a little fro. Sherrod had a fro.
Yeah, it was a long time. But
the runway going.
There we go. I think it's Houston. I think Houston, I know Kevin Porter Jr. just put up a 50-piece, but they are intentionally trying to get the worst record in the league. And even if against their best efforts, they're not necessarily achieving it. I think Minnesota's a better team than we give them credit for once they've gotten, D'Angelo Russell, Karl Towns, and Anthony Edwards all playing together. Like beating the Utah Jazz multiple times was not necessarily a fluke. They've got some talent over there. Detroit, I think this is what they've been playing for this year. They've been playing to be in that bottom four so they can get a draft pick and then start digging themselves out of this hole. So, but I would give Houston a leg up on virtually anybody not playing in the NCAA.
Yeah. I mean, wow. Damn.
No shade.
No shade.
No shade.
Not at all.
No shade.
Now, Houston, they have actually, they're like, that fighter that is just about getting that check. As soon as he gets in the ring, he's halfway down for the count before the bell rings. That's the Houston Rockets right now. They ain't trying to fight. They ain't trying to put up. They're not trying to do anything other than just put out 5 human beings for 48 minutes, and that's it. What happens happens.
Post Stephen Silas.
I feel bad for him. Brother finally get his shot, and they give him a slingshot to work with. Everyone else got BB guns, Mac, Mac MR7, Mac 10s, and all that. They give him a slingshot.
Oh gosh.
They gave him
Rusty would have that. But
a plastic knife.
Exactly. No, but Houston, yeah, I mean, they absolutely will have the worst record. I think Detroit will be second, which is good for Detroit because, yeah, I like the fact that the Pistons are at least putting guys out there who you get the sense are trying to compete. And Minnesota, they're just a disappointment to me, man. They should be better than – they should be one of the teams fighting for that 7, 8, 9, 10 spot. Their talent-wise be that good. And the guy that they brought in to kind of be their coach, the guy from Toronto, got my own personal feelings about David Vanderpool and how they did him, and I'm going to leave that alone. But bottom line is this. Minnesota sucked before they got the new coach, and they're just as bad now. So you just leave it right there.
Dang. All right.
No shade.
No shade at all. That should be the name of this episode. No shade. Between Tibbs, Doc Rivers, and Monty Williams, who do you see as the coach of the year?
Well, we got to put Doc in there. This is like the obligatory Boston obligatory
because
thing.
His team has the best record in the East.
He turned the Sixers around, essentially.
Well, that's because Philly had one of the 5 worst coaches last year in Brett Brown, and now they've got a competent human being there in Doc Rivers. Yet
another addendum to the No Shade podcast this week.
Yeah,
seriously, he's from this No Shade.
Isn't he from Boston too? Or
he's from New England, yes.
Australian Boston or something like that. Brett Brown, probably a good assistant. Australian Boston.
Oh my! You know what? Just call this one so much shade. No, not even no shade.
No, he coached in Australia too.
Yeah,
okay.
He did. And he coached in Boston, and he's from New England. Yeah, you're right.
But my coach of the year is Monty Williams, and not just because the Phoenix Suns are playing in a tougher conference, but you look at he's had to absorb Chris Paul and coach Chris Paul. That ain't the easiest dude to get along with, in case y'all didn't know. And no disrespect to the short people on the podcast. Short people can be kind of bossy and a little bit, when they stick their neck up and put their finger in your face and all that type of stuff. That ain't really funny.
Damn, really?
Cool. That ain't really cool.
Oh, wow. Continue.
I think with the young team that he has, transforming young teams into winning basketball is one of the hardest things for an NBA coach to do, because so many of these guys are about, let me get my number so I can get my next contract. I'm not as concerned about winning as I am about performing well. And although Chris Paul is going to get a lion's share of that credit, you cannot discount the stability that Monty Williams has provided on the sideline. I give it to him a hair over Tibbs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Monty's done a really, really good job. And it's hard for me to just not take into account what Tibbs has done in New York, because that is a cesspool, man. I mean, that is a basketball cesspool. And I look at the roster that Tibbs is rocking with. I love Julius Randle. And when we're talking about all NBA, he should definitely be in the conversation for that third team. But other than that, you got a bunch of retreads and nomads and just a bunch of hoodats. Like RJ Barrett was a high draft pick, but he's balling, like really balling. Nerlens Noel has been an amazing quickly. Young fella from Kentucky is. I look at the job that Tibbs has done, taking a team that probably should be in the bottom 2 or 3 in the East and has them way, way above where they should be in terms of talent. And Monty has done a great job in Phoenix, but Phoenix was going to be in the playoff picture with or without Chris Paul. And I love what Monty has done, but I'll give it to Tibbs by a hair because I look at the growth that he's had to bring about, basically dragging his team to the top 4, top 5 spot in the East. Whereas Monty, I love what he's done.
Drag them to the top of the Western Conference, not to the mid
They
level.
were going to be a playoff team.
And why were they going to be a playoff team last year? Because Monty Williams was coaching there. That's why.
Has taken a team that was listen. The Knicks have gone from 100% ashy to sort of kind of classy. Phoenix was already looking good even before the season started. They were going to be.
Were they good before Monty Williams got there?
No.
Okay.
They needed him. He's Monty. Look, you will not get me to bash Monty. He's done a hell of a job. I just think Tibbs is a little bit better this year. That's all.
All right. Well, final question in this round. Who would you like to see the Lakers face in the play-in game?
Ooh, if there's 7, and it's 7 versus
we on the same page with this. I know we are.
They won't. Like, they won't play Golden State in 8 because Golden State won't get to 8.
That's where they are now?
No, I thought Golden State was like – I thought Golden State has risen to 8?
Yeah, they 8 now, right now.
If they're at 8, then that's if they're 8, then that's all I want to see. One game take off.
I got the popcorn in the microwave. I just gotta hit the P button and start having it popping. We're gonna watch that game. That will be one of the most watched
epic
games ever.
It'll be more watched than the actual conference finals, I think.
That game will get better numbers than second round and conference finals.
Right.
At least it's one game. It's literally it's literally like March Madness, and you get Steph. Steph is playing with the Davidson Wildcats. If you look at Steph's college team, that's literally what he's playing with right now. He's playing with a bunch of dudes looking for frat parties after the game. That's what he's playing with.
He didn't even say the G League. He just said the Davidson Wildcats. That's how.
The best dude that balling with you can't get you more than 5 points. If he gets you 6 points, y'all winning. He gets you 6 points, you win. Where in the world can you get 6 points from your second best player and you know that's going to get you that dub?
Right. I'm here for it.
Say that to Draymond Green. Say it to him. Say it to his face. Say it to his face.
Hell no. Hell no.
All right.
Hanging out with that dude in Toronto during All-Star Weekend? No. I know better. I talk smack on here, not to his face.
Smart. All right. We have our other game. Let's speed this up. It's called Starting 5. We ask you 5 questions, mostly about sports, but they won't always be about sports. So the first one, Rudy Gobert or Ben Simmons for Defensive Player of the Year?
I'll still take Rudy Gobert.
He's just anti anything Philly.
You know what? I'm with him on that. I'm gonna take Rudy because I think Ben can do other things, and I think Ben's defense is very good, but I don't think it's as game changing as Rudy's is, particularly down the stretch where teams are trying to finish at the basket, and you got him there. I'm with that. I'll roll Rudy.
Okay. The over under on scoring titles for Jason Tatum is 0.5. What are you taking?
I'll give him 1.
Okay. I'm gonna give him none.
I'll take the over.
Oh, dang.
I'm taking under. I think he's always going to be playing with somebody. I think he's going to have the same issue that we're talking about with Bradley Beal. You got that other dude that is going to – he's not going to take your shine, but he's going to take your shots instead. Jaylen Brown.
But we've never seen a guy, Jason Tatum, play with a bona fide point guard that makes the game easier for him.
True.
That's true.
True. It would really be nice to see him play with Rondo. Like this version of Rondo now. Not Rondo who thought he was better than Chris Paul Rondo. The Rondo that's playing now. Actually, Rondo playing now, still think he's better than Chris Paul.
Who are your top 5 point guards of all time? If Russell makes the cut, where does he rank?
Russell Westbrook does not make the cut. I am not on drugs. Number 1 is Irvin Magic Johnson. I think that is pretty undisputable, although Isaiah Thomas has a case as number 2. Number 3, that's not a Detroit bias. That's just
no, I know. I just wanted to clarify because we had a conversation earlier about people getting the Isaiahs mixed up. So I just, for the audience to know who you're talking about.
They should know, but Boston should know.
In the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
The one that put Boston out of the playoffs.
But I had to still clarify.
No, the one that put the Celtics out of the playoffs. That Isaiah Thomas.
Clown. Wow.
That guy.
Continue your list. There. You're at 2.
I had 2. The rest don't matter. But
okay.
Steph Curry at number 3. I think I'll take John Stockton at number 4, Chris Paul at number 5.
Okay. That's pretty good. I mean, Magic would be my 1. Number 2, I'm probably gonna go.
Don't you do it? Don't you come up with no blasphemy, Sherrod Blakely? Don't you do it,
Anthony?
I can't. All right, Abigail.
Some names out there. Oh my gosh, people finally figured out what the A stands for on the podcast.
With all the government names on blast today. Government name day. No,
it is.
This is in no order because I just think there's too much intermingledness with them. But to me, Magic is a clear-cut number 1. And after that, I think you got to look at Chris Paul. You got to look at I mean, even though it's a different time, obviously, got to throw Cousy in there, man. Got to throw Bob Cousy in there. Top 5 all time. I got to put him in there. Game changer, man. All the fancy ball handling that we see today, he was kind of the originator of that, man. He was one of the first guys with flash and panache at the point. It's got to throw him in there. Chris Paul, Cousy, Isaiah Thomas, and that 5th spot is, I mean, you could have Oscar Robertson, you could have Russell Westbrook. I'm not going to put Stockton in there because I would take Westbrook over Stockton.
I would. Here's the reason why I wouldn't. Is because if I need someone to control a game, you taking Russell Westbrook, you taking the Tasmanian Devil, or you're taking like, I'm not even the hugest John Stockton fan. Like I've sort of come around on him. But the thing is, if a point guard is supposed to control tempo in the last 2 minutes of the game and make sure we get good shots, that doesn't scream Russell Westbrook to me.
No, that's not his game.
What about Steph? You don't put Steph in the top 5? You put Russell over Steph?
Yes, Steph is. You're right. That's the one I was forgetting. You're right. So forget about your boy Russ. Forget about Oscar. Steph's in there. He's in that top 5.
Steph made the cut. Speaking of Chris Paul, between Chris Paul and LeBron, who retires first? Why is this a question?
That's a good one.
Because that day is coming sooner than you think.
Well, is this who retires first or who goes ball first?
I mean, we already know the answer to that one.
Listen, plugs throw everything off, so you can't even go with the ball thing.
Who is actually balled at the moment?
Exactly.
I think it would have to be Chris Paul, right? Because Chris Paul ain't waiting for his son to come to the league,
right.
and Chris Paul's body at his size, like it's almost like he's being a freak of nature at this point, that his body hasn't broken down. You know, considering all the hits that he's taken. At some point, Father Time gonna catch up to him before he catches LeBron.
Yeah, and LeBron can always go to the 5. You can always play the 5.
Right.
So or the 4. That's true.
Yeah. So and to your point, I mean, when you got young fella coming around the corner who'll probably be in the NBA, early as possible, LeBron gonna stick around for that. He will stick around for that, and he's built up enough collateral in the league where somebody, even if he is like broke down, can barely get to half court, somebody gonna sign him. Whoever drafts this kid is going to sign him. So
absolutely,
that's a given.
Facts. Final question: if you were not a pro basketball writer, what would you be doing right now with your life?
Wow. See, Sherrod, that's easy for Sherrod. That's very, very easy for him.
Why is that easy?
Because Sherrod's a natural teacher, right? Even you know what I mean. He's a natural teacher. You don't have to be a teacher to be teaching. That is like your gift. You know what I mean? This is kind of it for me.
You made it to the league, literally.
I made it to the league. I mean, I guess theoretically I could go into teaching. I just don't know if I have the patience to do so. Like Sherrod has way more patience than me when it comes to such things.
This is true. I'm dealing with you. I gotta have patience.
We've had some battles when I was much younger. We had some battles.
Yes, we have. So you want that Amir Johnson plan? It's the NBA or nothing.
Yep.
I got you.
Sherrod is your English teacher?
It'll be my answer for today. If it were like a sport, though, something that I was really good at was European handball.
You can't make money.
That's one of the low. That's like real low key Sherrod. Like no one really knows about that.
So in other words, like you real good at like slapping people?
I'm real good at European handball. 3 steps, 1 pass.
That's like right?
Ball movement.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
What the 5 fingers say to the face, right?
Something like that. Something like that.
Well,
but teaching is cool.
To that. Yeah.
What about you, Kwani? Yeah, I asked.
Not fair. I'm supposed to be asking questions.
You in the conversation?
I am. I actually used to want to be a lawyer, so maybe I would have went to law school if I didn't see this as a viable option. I mean, I'm still questioning if this is a viable option, but for now,
I was going to
say, I'm sticking with media.
Well, if I get pulled up about a popo, Kwani, I'll think about calling you.
Let me call my potential lawyer. No, don't do that. Call your actual lawyer.
I ain't trying to Kwani give me 20 to life.
Right.
Running a red light.
Take the plea, Sherrod.
They only want to give you 25 years running that red light. Get me out. Get me out by the time Social Security kick in.
Just take it.
Take the deal.
This derailed very quickly.
As
Vincent
it does.
Goodwill Jr., thank you so much for joining us today.
You didn't have to do that.
I did.
You didn't have to do that.
But listen, no shade at all, though. No shade.
No shade at all.
Okay. You're welcome.
We'll see you soon.
No.
All right. See, Brother Vincent Goodwill. Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. Always good, bro.
I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. Y'all be easy.